I'm going to do is talk about Git and how it relates to Puppet and why you should use Git as far as your code organization. So I couldn't bring my dog, but I thought Jelly Bean could help me out anyway with presenting this material. So as I said, this is just about simple Git organization. There's nothing in this talk about workflow. If you are interested in workflow, there was a lovely R10K workshop this morning that if you missed it, it'll be on YouTube. Our 10K is awesome, but that's not the scope of this talk. So at some point, as systems administrators, we ask ourselves, well, why should we use source control? And as you can tell from my dog giving that information some side eye, it should seem rather obvious. Puppet is infrastructure as code. We're writing code in order to express what our nodes should look like. So when we're using this new paradigm of coding, then we need to use source control. We need to be able to back out of our problematic changes. We need to be able to integrate with other tools. And version control is a good way to do that. So why Git specifically? Why is this talk about Git specifically? Why not SVN? Quite frankly, I don't care what version control system that you use. You could use SVN, you could use Mercurial, you could use Perforce, whatever you're comfortable with, as long as you're using version control of some sort. However, here we at Puppet Labs obviously really prefer Git. It is, we have all of our code up on GitHub. So obviously it's something that we prefer. Things like GitHub allows us to do collaborative community coding so that all of you can contribute to us what you think Puppet should look like. And you can also submit changes to our modules and things of that nature. So because it's very popular, there's a great deal of tools that have been coming out that make it easier to set up your own Git instant server if you need to. For example, today I'm going to be working with GitLab, which is a free Git server that you can set up very easily, very quickly, and it has just about all the functionality of GitHub. Now, as far as organization of your modules, of your Puppet code, you should use one repo per module. So I'm sure, I don't know if you are using version control. Some of you, I'm sure, have maybe either been in a shop that have had instances where they had all of their modules in one repo. That is really not good practice. Now, the reasoning for that is that changes are a little bit harder to track if you have one huge monolithic repo for all of your modules. So having one repo per module, treating each module as a project, reduces a great deal of confusion. So I'm also going to be demonstrating some Git hooks, just a couple of them. Now the reason why you should be using hooks, and you can use hooks in SVN and in Git, is that you want to stop it yourself. You want things to stop if there is a very simple error in your code. So like even stuff that your eye misses, you want to run some basic tests on that stuff and have that commit stop and say, no, you should really fix this item before we move on. I'm going to show you a pre-commit hook, but I'm also going to show you a post-receive hook and tell you why that is a lot better. And of course, Puppet and Puppet lint for these simple tests are going to be required. So let's get to it. So here I am in a repository that I've set up for this workshop, and I'm going to provide a link for you after, at the end of this workshop that you can pull down this repo and run through the same steps at your leisure. I don't recommend, so what I've done is that I already have these Vagrant instances up and running so that you can see for yourselves how this works out. But for right now, what we have, there's 3 Vagrant instances running from this repository. So running Vagrant runs a master, starts up a master, a test agent, and a GitLab instance. So actually running this, you will get this. So the first thing that you want to do is, after your instances come up, is log into the GitLab server. And the credentials are on the README here. All the instructions to run this workshop are on the README for this Git workshop repository. And the first thing that it wants you to do is to change the password. And then it wants you, of course, to log in again. So the first thing that we're going to, so this is GitLab. And as I said, it's a really wonderful, it's a free open source Git server. And I actually, as part of this Git repo, there is Puppet code that will automatically install all of this for you and get this set up. So then all you have to do is log in and change your password and you're ready to go. So I'm going to have a new group here. I'm going to call it Puppet, and basically this is going to be where I'm going to put all of my Puppet modules and all of my Puppet projects. I'm going to create that group, and then I am going to start a new project, and I'm going to call this example project my message of the day, and I'm going to make it public. I'm going to create that project, and there it is. It has, much like GitHub, when you create a new project in GitHub, a new repo, it gives you very clear, concise instructions on what you need to do next. So, but before I do anything else, I have to add an SSH key to my profile, which for maybe obvious reasons I'm going to do behind the scenes, because that's going to be my laptop SSH. So right now I'm doing is just catting out my key, and you're going to see this later. I'm going to do the same thing with the master. Okay, so I've added an SSH key. So now what I need to do is I need to configure, so my code that I have on my laptop, I have to make that into a repository that can connect to this repository on GitLab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this bit of code I have here. So I have just here a simple my message of the day module. Nothing real fancy. All it does is it just creates an Etsy message of the day file. Nothing too fancy. So this code is also up on my repo, but you can use just about any module to do this. If you wanted to, perhaps even pull down a module from the Forge and manage it locally, you can do that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this isn't already initialized, which it is. So I'm going to remove that .git. So that .git directory basically says this is a Git working directory. So I want to, though, reinitialize that as a repository that's going to use GitLab as the remote. So I'm going to do git init. So now I can do git status. And git status is showing me that all of these files are untracked and they are not part of a commit yet. So this is kind of the cool thing about Git, is that it has this idea of it's decentralized. So you have a repo that is your central repo that everybody contributes to, but you also have a local repo in your working directory. So basically when you're doing a commit, you're only committing to your local working directory. It's the git push that actually pushes your changes up to that central repo. So I'm going to git add all of this code to my commit list. So git status tells me where I'm at. Okay, so everything's ready to be committed and pushed. Oh, I didn't add a git remote. Thankfully, again, GitLab is giving me the command that I need to use. And all I have to do is copy and paste that command. Yeah. Yep. Now it's pushed up to the master. Now when I go back to GitLab and do a refresh, it's now an actual repository with files. And I can click on files up here and see and actually look around into my files. Pretty cool stuff. So then I can see my commits. This is kind of neat. I'm not going to go into branching models here in this workshop, but when you are doing branching and merging, you will see the history of that and an actual graph of that in the network view for each repository. Some graphing information, issues, merge requests. So you can do, they call it merge requests, but it's just like pull requests on GitHub. So you can have a change management workflow, just like you would with GitHub. And of course, you're given a wiki, and there's settings for the project. So what's next? So let's talk about hooks. So in this directory, I have a hooks directory. Now, if you want to store pre-commit hooks that you want your developers to use, you would store it in the hooks directory. And you would basically have a policy that says that you need to copy that hooks pre-commit over to the git hooks directory. And then that has to be properly it has to have the correct permissions, the correct settings in order for it to actually run when you do your git commit. So what this looks like is it's a simple bash file. It's a bash script. So what it's doing is that for each of the files that's changed during when a commit is done, what it is, it's validating a file. It runs a Puppet parser validate, and it does runs Puppet lint. So again, you need Puppet installed on your local working machine and Puppet lint. And it does also, if you have an ERB, it'll check your ERB for you. And that's it. And what it does is it'll spit out an error and not commit if there is an error. So let's introduce an error and see how this works. So for this file message of the day, I'm just going to simply pull out one of these commas, which I don't know about you. That's over and over again, I think that's very often easy to, an easy mistake that's usually made is you miss a comma. It happens. So I'm going to add that error. And it's going to spit back an error at me that says, you have an error at this line at manifestinit.pp, line 5, and you need to change that. So I can go into that file again. And fix the error. Re-add it. Now notice I had to re-add it after just making an edit. Now because what we're doing is that we are what we're doing is that we are committing changes to the file. So every change that's made, we actually have to re-add to the commit history, because we're at what Git is tracking is these tiny little changes. So that commit went through.
So will those be two separate commits?
Uh,
The one that failed and then the one that worked, or is it actually just taking that and forcing it?
It'll be in the Git log like everything else.
Okay, so it picks it up as two commits.
Mm-hmm. So we can see in our commits that it is there.
Wouldn't it be better if they didn't commit the error, just in case?
It would be, but at this moment, that's how that is the mechanism for pre-commit. But there is a better way. So you'll notice that me individually, I had to copy that pre-commit hook over to my Git hooks directory in my Git repository. So if you have a very large development shop, that is, I mean, granted, it's one of those things that, again, we're humans, and not everybody people might actually forget to do it, or, varying reasons. So there's a better way of doing this, actually, and that is with pre-receive, because pre-receive you actually do on the Git server itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over back here, and I'm going to access my GitLab server. So how I would do that with Vagrant is Vagrant SSH GitLab. And I'm going to sudo root. So that's a fully functioning GitLab server right there. These Vagrant instances in this repo you can use for several different reasons. You can use it. In this case, we're just doing a GitLab workshop here. But you can also use it like if you're at a place where your organization uses SVN or a different version control system or no version control at all. You could use this as a proof of concept to say, hey, look, this is really cool. We could do this really easily, and it's not that big of a deal. So now what we want to do is I want to copy over that hook. So that hook, did I delete that? I did. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over the hook. So in Vagrant, when you're using Vagrant on each of the instances, the hooks are available on Vagrant in the Vagrant hooks file. So that's like how you would access the information that is in the actual repo, is in the /vagrant directory. So what I did was, I copied over this pre-receive hook. So this is derived from a Puppet Git hooks repo that was out there, and I just made a couple of changes to make it work a little bit better. And it's a more simple pre-receive hook than before. So what it does is, again, it runs a script, Puppet manifest syntax check, and then it runs some Puppet lint checks. And then, so basically what's happening here is that when this is enabled, which we do by making it executable, what's going to happen now is that for this message of the day, so first what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my pre-commit hook. Now I'm going to introduce an error again. Let's make it a bad error. I was really, I don't know where my head was at on that one. So I'm going to git edit. So the commit went through, but when I try to do a push, that's interesting. Oh, I see the time got off because it is a virtual machine. So it's giving me a bunch of warnings. It's telling me the indentation isn't properly aligned. Those are style guide errors from Puppet lint. And it's also telling me, again, syntax error. It's giving me that syntax error from the manifest check. So then I can go into this, of course, and fix all those errors. So the style guide basically says that all of the hash rockets, which is what we call those, all the hash rockets should be aligned. And the reasoning, so this is a style guide thing, and basically this makes your code more readable. So I think that's a good style. I think that's a good style check myself. You might not think so. One of the great things about Puppet lint is that you can customize what it checks. There we go. We had a push. So in this directory, we have, in the commit hooks directory, there are the actual scripts that are running for those. So here we have the actual Puppet lint command that's running against these files. And one of the things that it's skipping is that the 80 characters check, because while you can be really picky and decide that you don't want any more than 80 characters per line, most people, from what I've seen, most people when they're doing Puppet lint skip that check. And if you go to puppetlint.com, it gives you, what's really nice, it gives you the flexibility to either check everything and make sure that every single lint item is checked against and make it very strict, or you can skip checks. And puppetlint.com has documents everything that it checks, as well as how you could skip those checks if needed. So we have now a very clean. So we have some basic checks now. Of course, this is just kind of step one, really, in our journey with Puppet as far as workflow. This is a very basic workflow. You know, there's other tooling that we can put in, like we can put in R10K. We can use stuff like unit testing, our spec Puppet. We can do beaker tests. But this is a good, just first step to kind of put something in our way between us and production to make sure that these very basic errors do not get into production. So then what we can do is we can go back here. Let's get out of this. Let's look at our master. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to so I promised I would show you how to put a key in GitLab, and here it is. So I'm going to cut out this key on the master. And then I'm going to add this key. So that would be in the profile settings, SSH keys, add an SSH key. I'm going to name it master, and then just paste it on in there and add it. So now the master has the ability to work with stuff in this repo. So I'm going to go back to the My Message of the Day project. I'm going to, again, it gives you the link on how to, it gives you the clone link just like it does on GitHub. So I'm on my master. I'm going to go into my environments directory, into production, in my modules directory. We're using directory environments here. I'm going to clone that here. So now we have that message of the day module available to us. We're in production, my manifests. For my no defaults, I am going to include my message of the day. And then I'm going to go into my test agent. So obviously this is, this is the beginnings of a workflow. This is not your final workflow by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a good way of starting the path towards properly testing your modules and properly organizing them in Git. So Vagrant obviously is a very good choice when for testing, it being one layer, just one layer of testing. Okay. I think that's about it for that. So, are there any questions? Yes?
This GitLab, will it scale? I mean, how many users?
How many, pardon?
How big, how well will GitLab scale? I mean, is that something I'm going to use in production or?
Yes, all you would need to be sure of is that it's on a machine that can handle the load.
Terri, would you mind repeating the questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's asking if GitLab scales well to large production environments. And the answer is that yes, it does, as long as you are, assigned enough resources to the machine as far as memory and that sort of thing. Yes?
What about branch level permissions or authorizations?
Yes, it does branch level permissions and authorizations. It does have a great deal of granularity as far as permissions. It's really nice. Yes? Yep. Okay. Oh, yes?
In the first example, the pre-commit hook, would that pre-commit hook also be propagated to my forward push? Those are kind of weird.
No, so the .git directory is what it basically only gets populated there when you do a git init. and that is your .git directory, and it's ignored basically when you're doing your commits and your pushes and that sort of thing. But the way you would propagate that pre-commit hook for others to use is to put it in that hooks directory. Yes.
So kind of following up on my earlier question about the pre-commit, is there any way to make that drop out until the commit not allow the commit to go through, or are you stuck with a commit of that code followed by a commit of new code?
He's asking if you were stuck with that in your commit history. I'm guessing out of embarrassment, because nobody, because again, you will have this history of all these commits that are, hey, look, I made all of these mistakes, and as far as I know, yes, it is in the commit history.
I was just thinking about it from the standpoint of cleaning up the commit history so it's easier to parse, as opposed to having to parse the one time that someone commits that code.
Git will let you squash commits. So
There is
Git
git
will
squash.
actually let you rewrite history until you actually push the origin.
You kind of logically rebase it and then.
Any other questions?
Are the example hooks that you showed today, are they available to download?
Yes, they are. That's a Git workshop repository that I was working from. It has all the Vagrant files so that you can spin up these instances that I was working with today, as well as all the hooks.
What was the URL for that?
Oh, here. That is right there. Along with all my information, if you have more questions after this, if you come up with any other questions or need more information.
You mentioned the source from where you got those hooks.
Yes.
Here, or is it another spot?
The actual source for those hooks are at another source. They're under another user. I'm not going to include that information because, quite honestly, I had to fix them up quite a bit. So I would need to basically do a pull request for those hooks before giving you guys that information.
Have you set up like a post receive to automatically push to the master so you don't have to go pull?
No, our 10K does that for me.
It does?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's not automatic by default. You have to do an R10K sync. But again, I recommend the R10K workshop that was this morning for more information about how that works. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.